Welcome to the Football Historian Podcast.
By all means, enjoy it.
He will go right to the very top.
Dos, tres, cuatro times.
Here we go, Germans.
I will turn these results round.
All right, that's good manners.
There's animosity, but there's no fight.
You can't beat them, join them.
How do you make me feel sick if I look at you?
No, I want to fight here.
Don't drink, don't sleep with women, don't drive fast cars.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit too!
Hello, welcome to the Football Historian Podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Phil Munns. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I started with a new question, which sounds a bit mean, I'm sorry, but who are you and why are you here?
Well, I'm Phil Munns, and I am a sports presenter and I suppose reporter, commentator, a few different things for BBC Radio Merseyside. So yeah, I've been there a good few years, started doing sport fairly recently on a full-time basis. Been into footy all my life, of course, so it's quite easy to slip into.
Yeah, that's a good place to be then if you like footy, thankfully.
Yeah.
So obviously people know you best for being on the radio. How did you get into that world?
So it was all back through sort of college education, really. It was when I started doing media studies at college, I realised that I quite like this media stuff. We did a bit of, we did all sorts, really. We didn't do a lot of radio, actually, at college, but we did shooting our own music videos for our projects, which was quite fun. We did bits of TV work. I think we even shot a trailer for a film as well. And I just loved doing all that editing kind of thing and, you know, shooting different bits. And I knew media was for me. So it was from there that I decided I want to go to uni, and I wasn't sure exactly which bit of media I wanted to do. So I did a rather vague media studies degree where you got to try all sorts of different bits of it. That was at Liverpool Hope University. And from there, they had a pretty good student radio setup, actually. Student radio station was there, and I kind of got involved in that in the first year and never really looked back from there, really. It was fun to do on the course. Loved getting involved in the student radio station. And then just that's how it started.
Yeah, great. Well, I went to Hope too, so I can vouch for it. It's a good place
stuff
to go.
Yeah.
So you do total sport now. That's obviously what you're working on most. Obviously you said that you weren't sure it was always going to be radio, but did you always think you'd go down the sport route, or has that maybe surprised you where you are now? Or
yeah, I wouldn't say it surprised me as such. I qualified as a broadcast journalist. I did a postgrad also at Liverpool Hope, where it was more news journalism, if you like. So I started out as a news reporter and bulletin reader at a station called D in Chester. That was where I got my first one. I did a few freelance bits for Radio Merseyside as well. Must have been 22, 23 at the time. This would have been about 2012, 2013, something like that. So I started out doing bits like that. Did bits of football reporting and commentating here and there. It was always a bit of a dream. If you can't sort of kick the ball yourself and be involved on the pitch, then to work, you know, in football in some way. So that was always a bit of a dream of mine. I always remember, I don't know too many people realise this, when I used to play, you know, like playing FIFA on the Xbox and PlayStation and all that, I used to turn the commentary down and do my own bits while I was controlling the players, which was quite difficult because you play at a quicker pace than you play the game in real life. But it was, I used to love doing it. And then, yeah, I just always thought, I'd love to do this one day. But yeah, I don't think I ever really thought one day I'll be behind the microphone doing it. But yeah, it's kind of always been something that I've been dead excited about.
yeah, that's possible. Now you said there, obviously you worked at another station before Radio Merseyside. I've got here that you were head of news at Cheshire's, is it Slick?
Silk, yeah.
That's my handwriting. That.
No, don't worry. So yeah, D and Silk they're sister stations under the same sort of umbrella, if you like.
Yeah.
Same company. So yeah, we did basically. It was a small team if you compare it to other commercial stations. Even if you compare it to like Radio City and things like that, it was a lot smaller. So the news team there was 3 people essentially. So you had a journalist, then the news editor, which I did both roles. I went from journalist first, then got promoted to news editor, and then you'd have a third journalist as well to help out with bits here and there. So yeah, that was quite the experience really, because I've never been sort of in charge of managing people before, and I think. Again, I can't remember. It must have been in my mid-20s when I took on that role. To think that I was responsible for other people when I didn't really feel like a proper adult myself yet was a bit strange. But I really enjoyed working in news, though. You never know what you're doing from one day to the next. So to just go in and think, who knows what the story will be today. Yeah, it's really good, and I love my time at Dee and Silk. It was a bit different in that it's low budget, it's a small commercial team, but in terms of how I sort of learned to broadcast, I learned a lot of what I still use today there. So it was absolutely loved the place, and I'll always have a bit of a soft spot for it.
Great. And just for someone at home maybe who doesn't understand, people on the radio, you're on for an hour, must be an easy job. I'm guessing that's wrong. So what is the life of a radio DJ? How do you do it?
I get this all the time, especially when I was reading news bulletins that were 3 minutes long, and they're saying, so hang on, so you do 3 minutes an hour, and then for the rest of the time, what do? Just sitting there twiddling your thumbs? It's really not like that at all. So it depends on where you're at. When I was at Dee and Silk, it was all about doing, making your own stories in a way, in that you've got to sort of find out what the story of the day is. You've got to get your own interviews, you've got to edit those interviews, you've got to sort of decide what's going to go at what time of the day, looking at next day all the time, and sometimes getting out to stories is not a quick job when you're reporting. So yeah, there's plenty to do. Sort of these days at Radio Merseyside, you've got, again, a kind of similar thing where people will say, oh, hang on, you're on a 2-hour show or a 4-hour show, but how do you do sort of full-time hours for that? Again, the sort of amount of work, particularly at Radio Merseyside, because it's a lot more speech-based radio, there is so much to do in terms of getting interview guests ready, whether that be chatting to football fans, whether that be going through press conference audio from Arne Slot or Sean Dyche or whoever else, and even just looking at other stories. Sometimes it needs a bit more than you just kind of get there an hour before the show, decide who you're going to talk to, and call them up. Often you'll do pre-recorded bits where you'll get things ready, and these days especially, there's a lot more clamour for multimedia stuff. Everything's got to be, if it can be, filmed for socials. We'll get videos out. We've got our own sports channels now. We've got Everton, Liverpool and Tranmere Rovers BBC Sounds channels, so there's getting stuff that we do, taking it from there and putting it onto those dedicated channels. So it's about trying to serve sort of not just radio listeners, but people who want to consume the BBC in other ways. A lot of our stuff will go in online articles as well. You might see some of our journalists quoted sometimes, or some of the contributors that we have as well. So there's so much to think about when it comes to that. And it's also not just about doing sort of interview and then playing a song, or interview. There's also, and I like to sort of try and take as much time as I can with this, about the sort of creative side of things. So if we're doing, say, a bit on Liverpool's result of the weekend, 3-0 win, it's like, right, shall we just chat to someone about it? Well, you could do, but what would sound a lot better is, have we got the commentary moment of one of the goals? We do. Let's play that, because it takes you back. It paints that picture for the listener, and it also sounds a lot better, and it's just a lot more colourful. Can we put that in there? Yes, we can. Can we get a bit of fans chanting "You'll never walk alone" or anything like that? Yeah, of course we can. We can get that in there. So it's about trying to find each story that we're telling, and using like the power of radio to tell it in a fun, creative and energetic way.
Yeah, but so there's a lot of work behind it then. You don't just turn up for 2 hours.
No, I promise you. The taxpayer's getting full value out of me, I promise.
Great. Well, obviously you're at Merseyside now, and you made the move over there, and you did the breakfast show as well. So how come you moved off the breakfast show to sport? And is sport where you think you're going to spend the rest of your career now, do you reckon, or do you want to go back to doing news, doing stuff like that?
To be honest, I can see myself doing sport for a really long time. It's something I've always thought would be a dream role if ever I got there, and now I'm there. I mean, I'm sort of in the ground sometimes, commentating on games. I'm chatting about football for a living. It's pretty good, to be honest. So yeah, I've got loads of like great ideas that I want to do with the sports show. I want to sort of do so much with the shows that we've got and with the commentaries. And I always get jealous when you hear certain clips or moments of like commentators or reporters where they're in there for that golden moment, and you hear like this sort of roaring passion in their voice. I'd love that to be me one day for a clip. I've not been fortunate enough to commentate on too many key important goals yet, but maybe that's to come. In terms of why I moved on breakfast, I love doing breakfast. It was something that came to me rather unexpectedly. I kind of, the BBC did various bits to sort of do what they thought was best for the business, and then I got the opportunity to to become a presenter, sort of moving from what my title was, which was journalist, even though I'd done a bit of everything anyway. The title was journalist, so I kind of moved into that. The hierarchy decided I'd be worth a go for a bit. So yeah, just sort of got stuck into it. The early alarms were horrendous. Getting up at 4 every day, I would not recommend. But in the end, the station just decided to go in a different way with the breakfast show in the end, and they decided I'd be a bit better doing sport, which I absolutely love. More than happy to do it. So yeah, it was short but sweet. The time on breakfast. I certainly don't miss not having to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I feel like human again now. Now I can wake up at a reasonable hour.
Yeah, that must be a nightmare. Bedtime must be quite early.
Oh,
you're missing Everdale, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It's basically, kids go to bed at like 7, half 7. I wouldn't be far behind, put it that way. Get breakfast, dinner ready for the next day, and then, straight to bed.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Right, I just want to ask you about, just in general, like, obviously being a radio DJ, interviewing people. I won't ask you who the worst interview is, because that's harsh, but like, what makes it a bad interview with someone? Like, has there been a time where you're struggling going, oh my god, there's only been 2 minutes gone of this, however long I'm supposed to be talking? And...
Yeah, that it can be a challenge, sort of both extremes, if you like. If you get someone who gives you 2 or 3 word answers, then that's hard. And I've found that particularly in football, you can get that a lot, particularly if like the mood is not great. So it's how to sort of get more out of someone when they do give you those really short answers. That can be quite horrible and hard to do. And on the other hand, if someone won't shut up, there's also a challenge in, well, how do you interrupt them sort of nicely and politely? There are ways to do it, but sometimes there's no natural sort of break in the speech, and that can be really difficult. It's definitely easier to have someone talking for too long than for too short, I've found. But yeah, you just kind of have to almost keep throwing it back to them in a way. Sort of, if they give you an answer that doesn't quite cut it, almost ask them again, or say why, or how.
What was the worst interview you've ever had?
I'm trying to think, is there any in particular? I'm going to struggle to think of a really bad interview off the top of my head, but there's plenty you get where they're just so short, and you're thinking, how am I going to get on to the next bit? And you've got the challenge of, if you're interviewing like a politician or someone like that, and they don't answer the question, then that's often, you can keep asking them in certain ways, but sometimes it can be tricky to get the answer. And if you can't get the answer, you've got to make it clear to the listener, to the viewer, that you've asked this question and you've tried your best to get the answer out of it. They have decided to answer it in that way. You've got to move on.
Well, maybe a nicer one then. Who's been the best person you've got to interview? Obviously, I'm sure there's been perks to the job that you're in now and before.
But best person.
Even if it's not the best interview, maybe just someone that you've thought, this is pretty good that I'm getting to speak to you.
Yeah, I spoke to Lee Carsley recently. So obviously England manager now. So that was because Carsley was one that I grew up watching and admiring. So to interview someone like him was really great. I even once got to ask one question of a serving prime minister. He was this is while I was at David Cameron came to a school somewhere, and it was one of those where quite often when you have these things, when prime ministers come to somewhere and they say, do you want to be involved as media, you don't quite get the sit down interview and more than 2 minutes really. Quite often they'll huddle the media together. They'll say you can have one question each max. So yeah, prime ministers, slippery customers, of course. They won't want to answer you too directly. Just trying to think of who else I might have interviewed that's of note. I've worked alongside, and still do work alongside, Alan Stubbs now, another player that I admired when I was younger. I always feel awkward whenever I come across people I watched when I was younger and I'm speaking to them in the flesh, because I don't want to make them feel old by saying, when I was a kid, I used to love watching you. But no, like a real honour to work with someone like him now. So yeah, there's been a few sort of football-y ones that stick out in my memory, really.
And who would be the dream then? There's one day you could they could be a co-commentator, or they can be in the studio with you, or whatever. You get to sit down and meet and talk to. Who would that be?
I would love to, and I'd like to hopefully get the opportunity one day. You never know. He speaks a bit more these days, but Duncan Ferguson is one that's always been on my list, just because he was a bit of a childhood hero growing up. Just the way he sort of played football, the way he didn't take any prisoners, if you like. And yeah, just some bits about his life I find are absolutely fascinating. So I think if I could speak to him one day, that would be a bit of a dream one ticked off for sure.
Yeah, but then just in terms of radio or wherever you want to go, what is the long-term goal for you, where you're hoping to be one day? Is it on Sky Sports commentating with Carragher and Neville, or is it being on a sort of different radio station, whatever? What's the dream?
To be honest, the dream would be, to do something like I'm doing now, but as high up the pyramid as I can. To commentate for a radio station like 5 Live, because for me, radio commentary and TV commentary are so different, and the way you have to paint that picture with your words for a radio audience is an art form. It's a real skill, and something that I've certainly not perfected by any stretch, and I'm always learning, always trying to find ways to be better. So to do it for a station that is as football mad and sport mad like 5 Live would be unbelievable. Also, how cool would it be if on Match of the Day you had Gary Lineker? I don't know if he'd still be doing it by the time I'd finally climb up that slippery pole, if I could do it, but whoever it would be, to sort of be introduced on something like Match of the Day. Yeah. Whether I'll ever get there, who knows? But I mean, in terms of being a sort of dream, that would definitely be one of them. Yeah.
Right, that's boss. Well, we're gonna have a quick break, and I want to talk a bit more about Everton in general. So we'll see you in a sec.
Hi, I'm Warren, the producer for the Football Historian podcast, and we're here today to talk to you about the Patreon subscription.
Yes, so for just £1 a month for the first 100 people, there's a lot of benefits that you get, and I think £1 is a terrific deal.
Pittance, yes,
£1 only, and you get early access, which means at least 24 hours before everyone else gets the episode, you get to watch it. There's also an extra section, we call it the Football Historian Podcast Extra Time, and we ask all the questions to the guests that no one else gets to see unless you're a patron. And on top of that, you're the ones who get to ask the questions. You send them in, we tell you which guest is going to be coming and sitting in this chair. You ask them, we record it, you get to watch it. No one else does. On top of that, we do a monthly special. We did one last night. It was a quiz. You were there.
Yeah, bedlam and great content.
Yeah, so hopefully you can watch that. As I said, we've got a round on Linvoy Primus or Lionel Messi. We've done mastermind stuff, all that. That's going to happen every month. The bigger this grows, we're going to do it even more regularly. Hopefully it'll be once a week. But we need your support. So to do that, £1 a month for the first 100 people. Your early support will be rewarded. From then on, it's £3 a month if you want to support us. If you want to pay £5 a month, you get all that we've just mentioned, but you get a poster. Warren will sign it, I'll sign it, all the lads. We'll get a few of the guests to do it as well. We'll send that out to you. And then for £10 a month, you get all that, the poster, all the early access, and you get a free copy of any of my books. So I've done one on Billy Liddell, Crossing the Park, Tommy Lawrence. They're all worth at least £20. For just £10, you get a copy of the book, all the stuff we've already mentioned. We'd really appreciate your support. We cannot do this without you.
This really is a passion project, and anything people can put into it goes straight back into it. We don't take a wage. We're doing this for free. We're doing this because we enjoy what we do.
That's it. It all makes the content better. And I say from just £1 a month, you can make our dreams come true. Thanks for the support. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Welcome back to the next section. Thank you for not running away. You're an Everton fan, but before we talk about that, a footballer, how good are you at football? How good were you at football? What's the highest level you've ever played?
So, on my day, I can be really average. So, I love playing football. I still play football now. I played football last night, and I'm in my mid-30s now, so it gets a bit sore the day after. But I mean, I've always played at like Sunday league levels, kind of like youth football, pub league level, that kind of thing. I've been predominantly a left back, really, in my career, if you can call it that. Tried to get forward, but not really. I wouldn't describe myself as like a Leighton Baines, for example. Probably more like a Tony Hibbert. Don't really get forward too much. Can't do too much damage in the opposition box. So yeah, that was kind of me throughout my 20s, really. Sort of kind of stopped playing 11 aside in my early 30s when kids came along and commitments and all that kind of thing. But I play a bit of 7 aside regularly now on a Monday night. All my neighbours, we have a football match on a Monday night. We play at Vauxhall Motors ground. There's a little bit of Astro just next to that, so we play there on a Monday night. And I'm gonna admit I push further forward these days because I just don't want to be playing at the back anymore. So I can score sometimes. I had a shocker last night though. I actually hit one. The big tall fences you get. I was hitting one first time, not only did it go over the bar, went over the massive high fences as well. So I had to run all the way around after the game and get the ball back because I was that bad. Sometimes I can put it in all right, but yeah, it wasn't happening last night.
So you weren't too close to being an Everton player then, but you're certainly an Everton fan.
No, yes, exactly. Yeah. I was never one of those that was ever scouted by anyone or anything like that. I was never like, average if I could keep up my form.
So, well, that's fine, but I'm very similar, to be fair. So, you obviously now being on the radio, I was fortunate enough to be on the show as well, where you talk about Liverpool and Everton and obviously sport and Merseyside, whatever. Being an Everton fan and then initially having to come on and talk favourably about Liverpool and other clubs, is that initially hard, or is that something that you were always happy to do?
It's certainly a challenge because it goes against your natural sort of gut instincts. Doing Everton is easy because you're on a station where, like Radio Merseyside, it's not like a 5 Live or a national broadcaster where you're expected to be neutral like all the time. If you like, it's okay that you can lean towards the clubs that you're talking about. So yeah, for Everton that comes pretty easy because I've supported them all my life. For Liverpool, yeah, bit of a challenge, but you know what? It's kind of like it's part of the job. It's being professional, and I know the job is that there are Liverpool fans out there who want to hear about their team and they want to hear about it in a certain way. They don't, I'm not going to lie to anyone and say, I'm a Liverpool fan. I like Liverpool. Everyone knows I'm an Evertonian. That's kind of how it's gone over the past year or so, kind of colours to the mast kind of thing. But yeah, that doesn't mean that I can't talk in the right tone and the right way. I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm not going to start cheering when they concede or anything like that. And I'll make sure I'm always delivering it in the way that Liverpool fans want and need to hear it, because that is the job, that is the role. Yeah. And I'm sure they know what my allegiance is, but hopefully I'm hoping that I do have that sort of level of professionalism that I can deliver it in the manner that's needed. Yeah. But I did a commentary at Anfield for the first time a couple of years ago, and that was first time I'd stepped into Anfield, so that was pretty strange. But I'd like to think I did a good job anyway.
Great. And then obviously before you were doing all this going as a fan, did you go to match often?
Yeah. I like to go as often as I can. So I've had season tickets in the past, not too recently. Again, sort of life kind of changed and had to give them up. But on and off, I've had season tickets at Everton. In more recent years, I've always had to sign up to the membership because that's the only way you can get a half-decent seat. I say half-decent seat. You're always behind a pole somewhere at Goodison. But it's the only way you can kind of get tickets without sort of selling out too quick, because they tend to sell out pretty quick these days. So yeah, try and get to, I'd say, at least 6, 7 or 8 a season, something like that. That's my aim anyway. Not been able to go away for years. It's too difficult now. I've done a few aways in the past though. There was one in particular that sticks out as a horrendous away. We were at Wigan on a Monday night, I think. And we were winning the game at half time, and we ended up losing it. I'm sure we did, because a mate of mine who went said, Omri Camera, don't know if you remember him, came on at half time, and he did the thing that no football fan should do, and that is comment on an opposition player while he's playing you or as he's about to come on and play you, because he said, he's no good, don't worry about him. He obviously scored, and they obviously won the game. And I remember someone chucking what was a cold hot chocolate from the back of the stand close to the front where I was. So one of my own fans absolutely soaking me. So that was just summing up the night, really. Yeah. So I do like to get as often as I can. I feel like I've sat in every seat in Goodison. I quite like that, because I'm not a season ticket holder. I can kind of change where I sit, see what the best vantage and viewpoint is, and go all over the place. So yeah, I love going the game.
And then for the radio commentary position, what was it like the first time you pick up the mic and talk about an Everton match and know there's people who are actually listening to you?
Like the butterflies that were in my stomach for that first time, and the nerves, but also like, you got that kind of spine tingling that you get, like when, I'm trying to compare it, when you first go to the game, if you've been to the game for years and you go now, you kind of walk into the door and you don't sort of feel, I don't know, you don't feel as much as you did when you first went. But when I picked up the microphone for the first time, I mean, that all came flooding back. I mean, I remember the game very well. It wasn't a very good one. It was during these recent years where Everton haven't been so good, unfortunately. And I think it was when Everton had just sold Luca Dean to Aston Villa. And then Everton's next game was Aston Villa at Goodison Park. That was the game I was commentating on. I remember thinking, why haven't they just held on another week to sell him? So he obviously gets the assist for the goal. Pretty poor performance. But, I mean, that didn't, for me personally, it didn't take too much away from that day because, I mean, that was a special day. I got to go and sit in the commentary box. I was rubbing shoulders with ex-players, with pundits, even like commentators that I sort of kind of knew of from like their work on national broadcasters who I sort of looked up to in a bit in awe at. I sort of saw them going about their business. Obviously, they didn't give me a second look because why would they? They're just getting about their jobs. But yeah, it was a real special moment. Hearing Zed Cars blare out and being the one who was describing the atmosphere and watching all of that unfold was quite special.
Yeah, but what's the dream game that you could commentate on then as an Everton fan?
I think the dream game has got to be a cup final. If you can get to a cup final and you can be there, either presenting the show from Wembley or being on the microphone to commentate, I mean, that's got to be the dream, hasn't it? If Everton could do that and dare I say it, go on and score a goal and win the game or anything like that, I mean, that would stick with you forever, wouldn't it? That's not going to go away. I mean, that's got to be the dream to have sort of all the screaming fans there and to have that moment of glory and for you to be a part of what could be a historic moment would be beyond a dream come true, that.
Well, that's certain lines of commentary just get attached to goals, don't you? There's the famous people on the pitch, you think it's all over. Mm-hmm. From a Liverpool side of it's the corner taken quickly, Origi, which is mad that that's one because that's the LFC commentary on it. It wasn't like the BT one or whatever. So, there's always a space for have a perfect comment with a perfect moment. So I'm sure that's the dream that would be for you. But you've obviously not just done Everton matches. I'm guessing you've done like other teams in your commentary side. So is that harder or easier to do your own team? Because I'm guessing when you're so passionately involved, maybe you're more likely to say a swear word out of frustration when it's your own team, maybe. Or
that's it. But I think minus the swear words, obviously, I think that kind of thing is creeping into sports broadcasting more and more in recent years. I think it's there. I mean, you mentioned them a little earlier on, Carragher and Neville on Sky Sports. There's kind of I wouldn't say a rule as such, but there's a way now that presenters and commentators and pundits, we all know who they support really anyway, and it's embraced now. It's kind of embraced, and people can still deliver the professionalism they need to and talk about other teams, talk about their own teams when they're on. You might get some people who might say, why is Carragher on the Liverpool games? There's clearly only going to be, one way, biased TV and all that. But I actually think, you get an insight that you wouldn't get with a neutral pundit almost. And I think that being able to wear your heart on your sleeve isn't a bad thing, and you can do that when you're in commentary, particularly on Radio Merseyside, because that's the team that you're backing. They're the fans that are listening to it, unless it's a Merseyside derby, of course. That's a different question. But if you're doing it, I feel like it's easy to do. I also feel like it's definitely more acceptable these days, and I think as well because you kind of forget sometimes when you're speaking to broadcasters or you're hearing broadcasters, before they are a presenter, a commentator, whatever you want to call them, they're a football fan. You don't get into that if you don't like football. There isn't one out there that doesn't like football, because that's just not how it goes. It's not like other jobs. Look, you might hate stacking shelves, but you've got to pay the bills, so you got a job at Tesco or whatever. It's not like that. You're always there because you absolutely love what you're doing, and it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be in that position. So I just think that if you've got that level of openness with the viewer, with the listener, whoever it may be, I think they appreciate it more and they can relate to you more. And I think, for example, if someone misses a sitter, I'm not going to sort of sit there and say, decent chance or whatever. I'm going to call it out and I'm going to say he has wasted a massive, absolute sitter, and I will share that frustration that they are feeling, because then it's what they're feeling anyway. So to then sort of show that I'm going through the same here. Ridiculous, it's I think it's a good thing for broadcasting.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say like Carragher and Neville myself, just saying how like they nail their colours to the match. So if you are one day on Match of the Day, you're doing an Everton match. Obviously, Match of the Day is a bit different, but would you reckon you would be able to be more neutral about an Everton game and be professional over it?
Yeah, definitely. Because, like I say, I've commentated on Liverpool and I got excited at Liverpool goals. And I also, I don't know if you knew this, there was another sort of moment which was a real test of my professionalism. I was in Madrid for the Champions League final, the Champions League that Liverpool won. I was one of the two-person team that we sent out there. And as part of my job, I took it upon myself really, but it was kind of, it's in the name of getting the best radio, and that's what I'll always do. That's always the priority. I actually sort of got from the area we were sitting in, the press area. As soon as the full-time whistle went, walked all the way round, just managed to, I thought, I'll see if I can get through to the Liverpool end. If someone stops me, they stops me, but they didn't. At the Atletico Madrid stadium, they just let me walk straight through. And so while the trophy is lifted, not many people will actually know this. You'll see all the fans celebrating, singing and all that. There's an Evertonian in there who is really confused. That is me. So I was there recording video, crowd singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" the moment the trophy is lifted and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I've proved my credentials in terms of professionalism by being able to do that. I was speaking to Liverpool fans in that end as well. Those boxes were played out on Radio Merseyside and on 5 Live as well. So yeah, I feel like I'd definitely be fine if I had to do something like that again one day.
Yes, you could be excited for a Liverpool goal if you have to, yeah.
Wouldn't go that far, but yeah, sure.
Right, then the last question I just want to ask about Everton in general before we go into more of a chat about Everton, but an easy one for you. How do you fix Everton now?
Oh yeah, no problem at all. No, hopefully we are sort of on the way to that happening. So, I mean, obviously the news has only come out in the last sort of 24, 48 hours that a takeover has finally been agreed. None of the in principle and exclusivity and all those buzzwords that we've heard. It's all sort of agreed, and hopefully it just needs the Premier League and the FA and the relevant bodies to ratify it. I mean, that's a huge step, but that's step one. So step one is sorting the finances out. Step two is getting into the stadium nice and safely in the Premier League. So this season's massive because Everton have started out poorly, really, really poorly. The performances I don't think have been as bad as the results have suggested, particularly in the last few weeks. But getting to Bramley Moore in the Premier League is essential because I don't think the way, even with new owners coming in, maybe that will definitely help things if a relegation were to happen. But if, let's say, a takeover didn't go through and we got relegated, I would fear for the whole future of the club. Like, I don't know the finances. I really don't. I don't have an insight in there at all. I just sort of hear what everyone else hears, that they are not great. You've only got to see the way Everton have sort of done their transfer business, the whole PSR stuff. So for me, it's get that takeover done with some decent guys. Hopefully the Friedkins are what they seem to have done an all right job at Roma, turning their finances around. Get to Bramley Moore in the Premier League, then the revenues can increase through the better stadium, the hospitality, all of that kind of thing, and using the stadium all year round. And then I think it's a case of a gradual sort of rebuild, really. I mean, who the manager will be next season, I think is a big question mark. Sean Dyche's contract is up at the end of the season. It's not often you get new owners come in and they sit still for too long on the manager. So what will happen there? I've no idea. But I think it's a case of get to Bramley Moore in the Premier League with new owners. Those are the big steps. And then you can kind of slowly look at, right, how can we start to improve the team sort of year on year? Because it was great when we had the years of being in Europe regularly under David Moyes. That was when I was growing up as an Evertonian. Those were, I didn't realise at the time. I remember watching those games, and don't get me wrong, I had frustrations in even those days. I mean, to think about that now, what we've been going through in recent years seems crazy. But I remember thinking, I'm hoping this is the start of something, us being on the way up to going back towards the top of the Premier League, challenging for cups again. Got to one FA Cup final in my lifetime. I was alive in 95, but my football memory starts at about 96, unfortunately. So I can't remember any others, but I think it's going to be a slow, gradual rebuild. Let's see if we can just improve year on year, and then hopefully we kind of follow a path like Aston Villa have taken. They were down there. They got relegated as well, don't forget. even when they came back up to the Premier League, it took them a good while, and I think they had various owners as well while they sort of struggled. But I mean, if you look at where they're at now in the Champions League, I mean, hopefully we can be there in I don't know how many years. As soon as possible would be great. But that's kind of, for me, almost like a little bit of a blueprint, rebuild. We've got the added bonus of having a big new stadium as well, so hopefully that can help us grow in the future.
All right, that's perfect. So we're going to have a bit more of a chat about Everton, and we'll have a quick break first, but yeah, we'll see you in this. Welcome back to the next section of the Football Historian podcast.
Sorry, Pete, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but where'd you get that shirt from?
Oh, this Latium number's just from Classic Football Shirts. Where'd you get yours from?
Thank you. Mine's from Classic Football Shirts as well.
Wow. Well, when I bought my shirt, I used the code TFH10 to get 10% off all orders. Did you use the same?
I did. I used a discount code. I think it was the same as yours.
Oh, TFH10? Oh, that's great, because if you want to get 10% off all your orders, you can use TFH10 at classicfootballshirts.com.
Unbelievable deal.
Right, hello, welcome to the third section. This is where we talk a bit more about football history, which is apt for the name of the podcast. So the first memory that you have of football, what is it, please?
Oof, first memory I have of football. You mean going to a game or football generally?
Whatever comes to mind. The first connection with football.
First connection with football. It was probably... It is going to my first Everton game, I think, is what I can remember. I can't remember much of the game itself. I think it was a dreary, like 0-0 or something like that, with Southampton or Leeds in the back of my mind. But what I can remember was, I don't know why my parents thought this was the best idea to take a young kid for their first experience of football. They took me in the depths of winter. Like, it was freezing. And all I can remember was getting wrapped up for the game. And then I can't remember where she got them from, but my mum said, wear these tights under all your clothes. I'll keep you dead warm. I remember not really being too keen as a lad to wear tights. I think I was 7 years old, something like that. But I put them on anyway, kind of embraced it. And then all I remember is sitting on the seat, not being able to see an awful lot because you're sat round adults and in front of you, they're just kind of blocking the view. I remember just being freezing and thinking, what am I doing here, basically? So my first experience, I'm surprised I kept going, really. First experience of going to the football was a horrific one. Especially, it was definitely a 0-0 draw, I remember that. So yeah, it was a weird one, but I was just a kid who was cold and fed up, really.
I think that's most of them, to be fair, when you first came. But yeah, maybe a better one for you. Then, what's the best game that you've been to or watched or been part of as an Everton fan?
Oof. Best game I've been to would be, I'd have to say, because I'm trying to think of some of the great atmospheres I've been in. My favourite game I've been to, I'm sorry to say it to you, but it's a Merseyside derby. It was when Andy Johnson scored a couple, I think, and who else scored the other one? Tim Cahill scored the other one. 3-0 win at Goodison Park. It was when Rayner sort of dropped the ball off his crossbar and onto Andy Johnson's head. It was special for a number of reasons. It was like a real significant... I don't think we'd beaten you for a little while by then, and it was a kind of a time when Everton was starting to be on a par with Liverpool in terms of league position. I think you were behind where you wanted to be. We were starting to get up towards where we wanted to be. And it was among that David Moyes era where once or twice we finished above Liverpool. And I just remember it being one because I went with my mate. We drove ourselves. I was just old enough. I think I was 17. So I think we just got like driving licenses. I think I borrowed my mum's car to do the journey. So it was quite exciting because it was one of the first times I was going to Goodison by myself or with my mates rather than with my dad. So, you know, it was kind of like a bit of a breakout moment really. And to go to that game as well, to see that result. I remember I dyed my hair blue for the game. Can't remember why I went that far, but decided to dye my hair blue for it. And yeah, just obviously that for us, it was the performance, the result, everything just went our way on that day. So yeah, it was a very, very good day.
Fair enough. You can have that one.
Thanks.
That's fine. What do you think is the best era of football? So it can be as an Everton fan, it can just be in general, but what do you think is the greatest era?
The greatest era. I feel like it was kind of the era we were just talking about, really. When I was growing up as a teenager and Everton were playing in Europe, fairly regularly. That one season, even finishing fourth, getting to the Champions League qualifier. Because for me, we were starting to see some really good players come through at Everton, but also in the Premier League as well. You know, you're trying to think of the likes of like when Drogba came to Chelsea and when people like him were sort of coming through. So for me, that era, because Everton were competitive with anyone on the day, really, we'd beat all the... There was a run where we were Man City's bogey side before they really became a bit of a powerhouse, and I don't think we've beaten them for a long time now. But yeah, for me, that kind of David Moyes era, because with me it was so... Yeah, I didn't realise it at the time, but it was the sort of the best time of my Everton life to this point. Hopefully that will change in the years to come. But yeah, seeing the likes of Arteta and Pienaar and Cahill, Yakubu, and all those. I mean, they were really really good players. Like I wish we had some of those available now. But yeah, to see those in their pomp, if you like, that for me was when football was dead exciting. When, just I don't know. It feels like since then you've got so much more money's come into the game, and I still love football. Don't get me wrong, but it does feel like sometimes a little bit of the little boy inside of me dies away when you see, like, you know, all the sort of lengthy VAR reviews and, you know, Chelsea are spending £700 billion. They're not getting punished, but Everton, who spent 10 million, are. There's little bits like that which just kind of kills the joy a little bit. And for me, it was kind of like, obviously there was still a lot of money in the game and all that kind of thing, but just felt a bit more pure, and, you know, it was exciting for me.
Yeah. That's a good idea, I think, especially for an Everton fan. Next one then would be the top 5 Everton players of all time, please.
So,
and in order, please.
In order, okay. In order, let me get my order up because I've written these down. So, I've gone with players that I've seen. So, I you know, there's obviously many players back in history, looking at your Dixie Deans and the like. You know, I've never seen them play in the flesh, so I'm not going to say this player and that player. So I'm going to list mine, the ones that I've watched play. So for me, number 5, I go with Andrei Kanchelskis. He made me probably fall in love with football for the very first time. It was a number 17. We've had a couple of decent 17s. Another one I'll come on to in a bit. But for me, it was sitting in the top balcony, almost looking down, almost from a bird's eye view, onto Andrei Kanchelskis. And the way the shirts were in the 90s, they were huge, baggy things. And it was the way that he bombed up that wing, and you just saw, all you could see was his shirt rippling about in a crazy way. They weren't skin-tight things like you get these days. And just the sort of the skill and the tricky sort of nature of his play, how good he was as a winger. So for me, I'd have him at number 5 just because he was... And he kind of at the time, it felt like we didn't have anyone else like him at the time. And he really sort of... Yeah, he was a really exciting player to watch. So for me, he's at number 5.
Yep. What? Can I help?
Number 4. I know what players I've got. I just need to remember the order I've got. 4, I'm going to go with someone who's a bit more recent, still playing actually, Romelu Lukaku, because I've not seen, I don't think, a better striker than him. I think I'd quite like Yakubu when he played, but for me, Romelu Lukaku was your ultimate mix of power, of speed, of strength, and his finishing was always pretty good quality as well. And he just seemed to have this sort of way of bullying defenders, and I was just always surprised with how, you know, he was a big lad. He's a bit bigger now, he's put on a bit of bulk these days, but it was the way he was quite lean and really quick at the time, in that he could outspeed you as well. So for me, he was like your ultimate kind of centre forward. I don't know if he's put him quite in the... Obviously Erling Haaland nowadays is kind of your benchmark, but in a way he was big, quick, he kind of had the full package, if you like. And, you know, the goals he scored for Everton have put him up there. He's the leading Premier League goal scorer that Everton have had, and no one's been able to get near him for a good while. Might tell you more about Everton's current fortunes than his qualities, but it was just the way that with him up front, you knew he could bully anyone off the ball, and you knew that there was always a turn of pace there. You knew he'd get in the right place. You knew his finishing was always quality as well. So yeah, it feels like I don't know how long it's going to be before we get another striker that's got the all-round package like he did. I mean, sold him to Man United for, I think, nearly 90 million in the end as a package. So, yeah, he was a brilliant striker. And what I'd do to have someone like him in his pomp. I don't think I'd have him now. Since he's bulked out, I feel like he's not the same striker.
I think he was at his best.
I think Everton Lukaku is the best Lukaku we've seen.
Players that you build a team around type thing, and I think that's what he was at Everton. And then if you put him to a team where, I'm not trying to, no offence, but if other players of more similar quality, he wasn't shining as brightly and definitely didn't have that confidence, did he? But yeah, go on, number 3.
So number 3, I've got to go with Phil Jagielka at number 3.
Right.
So, I mean, I've not seen a centre-back be able to do sort of everything quite like him for a good long time. The only area that Jagielka lacks in, he didn't get too many goals. Scored 1 or 2 absolute belters, as I'm sure you're aware of as a Liverpool fan. But for me, it was all about his defending. In the sort of era where we got to the FA Cup final under David Moyes, after we signed him, I think something like, he was one of the sort of several Moyes bargains. I think he was like £6 million, something like that. It didn't cost a lot at all from Sheffield United. And he was so quick. He was deceptively quick, actually. You looked at him and you didn't think there's a player that's going to outpace anybody. But I remember reading stats about his sprints at the time. I remember hearing, he was up there with the quickest players who were around at the time. And you saw that whenever he needed to do any sort of recovering defensive-wise. He was always there. His tackling was always timed to perfection as well. And the way he sort of organised the back four, became Everton captain as well. He's certainly the best centre-back I've seen in my lifetime as an Evertonian. So, yeah, he's in at number 3.
Yeah, okay, go on. And then top 2, silver medal.
Leighton Baines is number 2. What a player Leighton Baines is. I am shocked that he didn't move elsewhere. I know there were rumours a few times Man United were linked a little bit with him, especially when Moyes went there. But the fact that nobody thought, I'm going to go out and break the bank to get this guy was quite shocking. And I was glad. He never struck me as someone who was ever going to kick up a fuss to make a move. But I just thought, someone's got to come hammering the door down for this guy. I mean, the link-up that he had with Stephen Pienaar and the relationship they had was telepathic. Like, they just knew where each other were at all times. Leighton Baines, until quite recently, I think, was the leading assist maker in the Premier League. I think it was Robertson overtook him recently. Yeah, Robertson overtook him. But he just always found that pass. And just to add to his game as well, took a very good free kick. Although he never scored a free kick at Goodison Park, which astounds me. He scored, I think it was 9 in his career.
That Newcastle away one, since you remember that.
One of my favourite goals ever, because he had absolutely no right to even think about shooting from there. It was so far out. But the way he absolutely leathered it, foot through it, and then it was impossible for the keeper to deal with. I can't remember who the keeper was for Newcastle that night. But it just kind of like moved in the air and it just arrowed into that far corner. But it was the fact that it wasn't shooting distance. You shouldn't be shooting from there. He should have been getting an absolute telling off from wherever the manager was at the time. But yeah, that was up there. And also, you knew when it was a penalty, he's sticking it in the back of the net. I think he only missed, he might have been just the one. I know he missed one. I can't remember if it was more than one. But he had that all-round play, and he was a good defender as well. He got up and down that left-hand side. It shocks me that no one else, considering we were not a Champions League team, was coming in for him and trying to make him their left-back, because for me, he's probably the best. For me, he's the best left-back in the Premier League era, for sure. And yeah, so lucky that we had him, and what a player.
Yeah. Well, and then the winner is?
Tim Cahill. Got to be Tim Cahill. £1.5 million from Millwall, another bargain of a signing as well. But he just had not just the quality. I mean, he was brilliant in the air for someone who wasn't tall. He always had that knack of arriving in the box at the right time, in the right place. He had an incredible leap on him. His heading ability was just superb. I can't think of a better header we've had than that. And you think of some of the taller players we might have had that maybe should be better headers. I mean, Duncan Ferguson was obviously a great header of the ball. He's probably similar kind of levels really, but it was just the way that Tim Cahill could out-jump anyone, out-fox anyone in the box. And that wasn't all he sort of brought to it as well. He was great with his feet. I mean, I remember very well a late equaliser he scored against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, where the cross is an awful one. It might have been Morales crossed it, an awful cross. It's behind him. So he has to stick out a leg, which kind of stands the ball up in the air. He's got his back to goal, and he kind of, just as a reaction, leaps into this incredible acrobatic bicycle kick, and it ends up in the back of the net. And he had that in his locker as well. I actually thought he was really unlucky in the World Cup in Brazil. He played for Australia. It was where James Rodriguez broke through for Colombia, and James Rodriguez got goal of the tournament with the one he scored. I thought Cahill's was better. He scored a left-footed, was it a volley? I can't remember if it was a volley. It was from miles out with his weaker foot, and he absolutely belted it underside of the bar and in. I don't know how that didn't get goal of the tournament, especially considering it was his weaker foot. Yeah. But he could score any type of goal, and he always scored against the big teams in the important moments. And also, his blood was blue. Like, the way he sort of fell in love with Everton and sort of made that connection with the fan base, which I've learned, especially in recent years, it's not that easy. It's not that easy to just go in and be loved by a fan base. We've had players that have been at the club for years who I would say are not massively loved by Evertonians. You know, I know we've not done too well in recent years, but Cahill just got it. And he also had a cool celebration, didn't he? Boxing the corner flag. That was pretty cool.
That helps.
So yeah, no corner flag in the Premier League was safe with Tim Cahill around. So all those things combined, the fee, the bargain, the passion that he showed, the fact that he could score any kind of type of goal. He was also useful defending corners and stuff as well, because he was so good in the air. Yeah. And for someone who was not overly quick, was not known as an overly brilliant like sort of playmaker or passer of the ball, but what he brought, considering that is like what the game is these days, like excellent passing and pace and speed, you know, considering he had none of those things and he was still so brilliant. For me, that makes him my favourite Everton player of all time. I think he's the best Everton player during my Everton lifetime that I've seen.
That's fair enough. Okay, the next one then is the top 5 non-Everton players of all time.
Yeah.
So we can
let me refer to
go reverse order again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go in reverse order. This was a lot harder because there's a lot more players to pick from. But I've gone for someone at number 5 again who was not quick by any stretch of the imagination, but he was just a midfield genius. Andrea Pirlo, I've put in at number 5. So the things he could do with the ball. I mean, he played till he was quite late 30s because he didn't need to run. He didn't need to run because he was so good on the ball. He could just sit there and he could just control the entire game. He was like a magician, sort of he was the puppet master. They were all on his strings wherever he wanted to put the ball. And what a free kick he took as well. Like, you just knew edge of the box. If it was Pirlo, then you're in big trouble. So yeah, he's my number 5.
Yeah, and then 4.
Number 4, I've gone with David Beckham at number 4, just because I don't think the importance of being able to strike a free kick well and a set ball well I don't think it's praised enough these days in particular. But, I mean, that guy was a genius. And he kind of dragged England through by the scruff of the neck at times as well, thinking of qualifying by scoring that free kick against Greece, for example, last minute of the game. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. I know he's a Manchester United former player as well, so probably won't get too much credit for heaping praise on him. But it was just the way he sort of, he left it all out on the pitch, and his quality was unbelievable. Just the way he struck a set piece, I think, just meant that he could be brilliant in any side he played in, which he was. So yeah,
look at that Real Madrid team he played in as well. That's it. That's quite
in the Galacticos. And
showing of how good he must have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 3,
Thierry Henry. I mean, how cool is Thierry Henry? Like, he is just the things he could do with a ball. There's like the sort of, for me, the classic Henry finishes when he's cutting in from the left and he kind of just strokes the ball. But he could be like 25 yards out and he'd stroke the ball, it's straight into the corner. It was always lightning quick as well, which is so exciting. I just remember him being part of that kind of like era where Man United and Arsenal were battling for the league a lot, and he was just one of those players that you knew you couldn't really deal with him. There's no you can put whoever you want in there, but you're not going to be able to deal with Thierry Henry. You've just kind of got to do your absolute best. So yeah, the speed, the class, the way he stroked the ball in from absolutely anywhere, was the reason for me why he's up there.
Well, no, top two is there.
Top two, I struggle to figure out which order to put these two in, but it's two Brazilians. I think I'm going to go at number 2 for Ronaldinho, because he just did things that I didn't think were possible with the football. Like the things that he did, the skills. I don't know if you remember the one where he kind of like gets the ball and he could flick his leg one way, then the other, and still control the ball, and it would like go through a defender's legs. It's just, I tried to do that about 6,000 times, never ever could do it. But I mean, for me, he was the ultimate kind of showman and the ultimate trickster. But it's being that kind of that showman and that trickster and being able to do it at the very highest level of football, again, is a completely different sort of skill, different thing to achieve. So the way he could just, use fun and things like that to win games of football, where some of the goals that stick out for me of Ronaldinho's were the one where he was playing, I think it was Chelsea in the Champions League, Stamford Bridge, edge of the box. He kind of does like the ball stops still, does a bit of a dance, and he just pokes it from the edge of the box. He just no backlift or anything, just pokes it into the corner. And some of the runs he used to go on as well were fantastic. And he played a big part as well in, I don't know if you remember that Nike advert where they're at the airport. I think that was where one of those bits of skill was in, and he kind of like, he was reminiscent of that. For me, like, I suppose, Brazil have been all right since, but they haven't been as good since the likes of Ronaldinho et al. Sort of hung up their boots. They've not been quite the same for me. So he was like the last real Brazilian showman, magician, if you like. Yeah.
And then the winner, another Brazilian,
Brazilian Ronaldo. I mean, he was the perfect striker. There's no other way you can put it. He just had the lot. He could dribble past you. He was strong, quick. His finishing was unreal. I mean, he was something else, wasn't he? He wasn't. He was from another planet. And there are some great footballers who you could name, who I don't think get anywhere near to Ronaldo's level. Like, I think, who knows if maybe Erling Haaland might get to that way, the way he's going with his goal scoring. But for me, look how good he is. He's got work to do to show that he's going to be as good as someone like Brazilian Ronaldo. I say Brazilian because you got to make sure it's not the other one. As good as he is, I wouldn't have him in my top 5 anyway. And again, he was part of that era where, I was growing up, I was young, and you kind of look for who are the best players in the world, who are the best players. And while I was quite young, it was all about Ronaldo and what he did for club and country, particularly for country as well, because to have an exciting Brazilian striker, but yeah, he was a monster. You couldn't deal with him. He had the qualities I've talked about with other players. He had them all. He just had the lot. And yeah, for me, you can't get better than Brazilian Ronaldo.
That's a good show. Well, last question on this section then is just, can we have a five-a-side team, the best five-a-side team of football history?
Yeah, so I'm going to go slightly against what I've said so far. I'm going to pick one player that, now technically I did watch him play, wasn't in his heyday, but for me, I've got to have an Everton player in there. Yep. So I'm going to stick Neville Southall in goal. Okay, yep. Because I saw a bit of his final days. I mean, he was at Everton for a long time, but having seen what he did before that, what he achieved before that, having spoken to older fans who would tell me about Neville Southall, yeah, I know that he was a special goalkeeper. So I think to have someone like him between the sticks for your five-a-side team, good start for me. Right. At the back, I struggle with this one, but I think I'm going to go in a 1-2-1 formation. Right. So at the back, doing it by himself is going to be Maldini, because he was, I mean, how old was he when he even retired? I just remember him going on and on. Just the perfect defender. I mean, Italians know how to defend, don't they? They know best. So again, he was one, his presence in a team, when you saw him, you thought, people aren't going to get past him. So, you know, to have someone as brilliant as him, I'm imagining him, by the way, like, you know, like on a five-a-side pitch that me and you would play on. I'm lining them up in my head on this pitch.
That's fine, yeah.
I'm picturing him like down at the pits or somewhere like that, and it's dead weird, but that's where they're playing in my mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
In midfield, Ronaldinho's going in there because in five-a-side, I feel that you've got to sort of think about the game we're playing here. I don't know if when you play five-a-side, whenever you get someone who's tricky and skillful, you've got to be quick in there, and it's quick movements and all that. I think Ronaldinho in five-a-side, he would lap it up all day long. So yeah, for his skill, for being able to get out of tight spaces in five-a-side, Ronaldinho's got to go in there as well. Let me just remind myself who I picked for the other midfield position. Yeah, that was it. So I went for Kevin De Bruyne actually for the other one.
Okay.
Because, I mean, he can just put a football wherever he likes. Yeah. So I just thought, you know, if you've got him sort of almost as your deep-lying midfielder, he can kind of come back next to Maldini, if you like, when he's sort of cleaned up, and then De Bruyne can find Ronaldinho, and, you know, the rest will be absolutely fine. And thinking of sort of tricky players, you know, having quick feet, went with Messi up front. Thought that'll probably do all right, wouldn't it? Maldini with Ronaldinho and De Bruyne, and then Messi and Big Neville Southall keeping him out as well at the other end. So
you win at the pits with that,
yeah. I think they do all right at the pits, wouldn't they? With there, so yeah, I think that would be my five-a-side team.
Great. Then I'll put you on the spot for a super sub who can come on and change the game.
Ooh, super subs come on and change the game. Let's have a think. Some of the other players we've talked about. I'd maybe go for Zlatan Ibrahimovic, because a lot of five-a-side, you often get someone who's horrible to play against. I feel like he's one of those.
Yeah.
He could come on, you know he's got skills and class. So he's got that kind of quick feet that you need. But also, like, if you need someone to come and rough up the opposition as well, I've got both in one player there. So Ibrahimovic is my super sub.
All right, that's great. Well, that ends this section, and then we'll have a final section where we're going to settle some of the biggest debates in football history. So we'll see you in a sec.
Okay.
Are you looking for a Kazakhstani football team to support? Then I think FC Keme is a team you should support. Do you agree?
Growing up as a child, I always had FC Keme posters on my bedroom wall.
Well, and all the children of the Kazakhstani future will have FC Keme posters on their wall, because FC Keme is the team to support, and because of that, Tom has made us a chant that we're all going to follow. So,
up the Keme, up the Keme,
up the Keme. Make sure you follow them on all the social medias. All the posts and all the things you should follow will appear below us right here. You should be a supporter of FC Keme.
Live, laugh, Keme.
The debate.
All right, welcome to the final section. Settle the biggest debates in football history. And the first one, I am interested, as you are an Everton fan, on your perspective of Gerrard, Lampard or Scholes. And in order, please.
And in order. Okay. I don't think I'm allowed to put Gerrard at number one, so I won't. For me, Gerrard and Lampard are kind of in a bit of a different role position to Scholes, but I can understand why they're sort of paired to, why they're grouped together rather. Who do I go for at the top, Lampard or Scholes? For me, Lampard was a better goal scorer, so I'd go with Lampard as number one. I'm not going to put Gerrard at the bottom just for the sake of it, because I think Gerrard brought more than Scholes could to a football pitch. Not saying that Scholes didn't bring much, because of course he did, but for me, Gerrard and Lampard were a bit more of the all-round package that you want from your midfielder than Scholes is. Like, Scholes would get you the odd goal, whereas Lampard and Gerrard were prolific goal scorers, as well as dragging their teams through, good captains. So yeah, I would go for Lampard first, Gerrard and Scholes.
Okay, that's great. We haven't had any Everton fans on to the last two guests, and I don't think Lampard had a vote, and the two Everton fans have backed the former Everton manager to be the best.
Not biased, I promise.
I know, that's fine. But I was just interested as well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Next up is Pele or Maradona.
For me, Maradona was just too much of a genius. I know, like, the hand of God and people hated him and all that, but don't know. There was something about him. He was in that kind of like that messy league, if you like, where there's not going to be another player like him for a long, long time. And there wasn't really, probably until Messi came along. So Pele was all right there, wasn't he? He did okay. But for me, and from what I've seen, from what I've read, I just feel like Maradona had more of an impact for his teams than maybe Pele did.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a very hard one though,
because the closest debate we do. So yeah,
they are both geniuses. But yeah, I'd edge towards Maradona.
Right, next one is Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo.
Tough one here. I've gone back and two with this one a lot because they're kind of, in a way they're similar, but also they're different. Like for me, Ronaldo is more athletic and could do things that Messi couldn't, but Messi could probably do things that Ronaldo couldn't. Oh, this is a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Cristiano Ronaldo just because I really do admire the sort of athleticism that he shows. Could jump to like criminal heights and some of the sort of things he did. So yeah, again, you're not going to make these easy, are you? But I just edged towards Cristiano Ronaldo, and scored his 900th goal recently as well. Yeah, doing a few bits now in a not so competitive league, but yeah, for me, Ronaldo just edges it.
There's a reason why the debate, because they're all close.
I've got that now.
Right, next up then is if Messi and Ronaldo are the greatest players of the last 15, 20 years, however you want to say, who is the third best behind them?
Of the last 15 years or so. It's so hard. I've talked about him already a bit, but early career wasn't as good but someone like last 5 years, someone like Kevin De Bruyne, the things he's done and the way he's kind of been so influential for Manchester City. I know they've had quite a few good players over the last few years, but for me, he can put a ball anywhere by passing it, and you don't know whether you should go in tight to him or drop off him, because if you drop off him, he can just whack it in from 25, 30 yards. So, it's a hard one there, because he doesn't bring a lot defensively. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would settle on Kevin. I do love Kevin De Bruyne, just the things he can do. He's kind of got that, like Pirlo, where he could just sit. He doesn't have to run. He can do a bit of running, so that helps, but he wouldn't have to, and he'd still be a brilliant player.
Yep, that's a good shout. The next one then is goalkeepers. Buffon, Casillas and Neuer. You could put those three in order for me, please.
In order. I'm going to put Buffon at the top straight away. I mean, he's only recently retired, hasn't he? To think it was... And Casillas as well was another one that... I mean, I'm 35 now, but I can remember watching them when I was young. So it's weird to think that the longevity of them. But for me, Buffon did it at the highest level, probably for the longest of those three. I'm not sure if that's technically right.
I think Casillas just got a chance when he was like 16, didn't he?
He did. He came through dead young. Yeah,
but Buffon was just forever, wasn't he?
Yeah. And Casillas faded a bit sooner than the others did, as good as he was. So Buffon's number one for me. I do really like Neuer. I'm going to put him at number two because he almost started this goalkeepers can play football movement, didn't he, Manuel Neuer? He was more than just the shot stopper and the controller of the penalty area. Sort of one of the original sweeper keepers, I suppose you could say. And so on his day, like nothing's getting past Manuel Neuer. So he's at number two, and Casillas can slot in at number three.
Okay, that's great. And the next one, it will be, I'll go this. Would you rather be captain for England to win the World Cup or captain for Everton to win the league?
It's got to be Everton for the league, like all day long. Like I enjoy watching England. I'm an England fan. I'll admit that I don't care when it's not a tournament, but when the tournament is on, I'll put my England shirt on, and I really do want England to win, and I enjoy watching them. But yeah, Everton all the way. There's not even a moment's hesitation for that. I've done it in my dreams a few times, It feels good. Feels good. I scored at Old Trafford once in my dreams. That was so, when you wake up and you're like, can I just go back to sleep to go back to that? I was doing all right at Old Trafford there.
I usually boot me missus when I do that, though. That's the issue.
Oh, do you?
I pretend I'm asleep, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Everton hands down all the way. Oh, what a moment that would be.
Yeah. Don't think it's going to happen, sorry, no offence, but yeah.
No. I mean, if you look at Ashley Young, I've still got a chance of getting in the team. I've got a few years till I hit that age, so yeah, we'll see.
All right, great. And then we've got 2 left. Yeah, 2 left. So the greatest manager of all time is.
I've not thought about greatest managers often. Who is the greatest manager of all time?
So we're getting Guardiolas, we're getting Fergusons, Ancelottis.
Yeah. I mean, I can't just throw Ancelotti in there just because he's managed Everton for a bit. But the one thing I would say about Ancelotti is that you don't see too many top managers, and I'm not trying to sort of take a dig at my own football club here. You don't see them not manage the elite too often, do you? Especially not when their careers being established. Like, you couldn't imagine someone like Guardiola going away from Man City for a bit and then going to manage someone like, I don't know, Spurs or Villa. Just wouldn't see it happening, would you? Yeah. So the fact that he came in and did an all right job with Everton. His league finishes weren't great, but at one stage I think we were nearly top at Christmas, and I nearly sort of imploded that particular year. But I just think because of everything he's achieved in the game, you can't see past Sir Alex Ferguson. The amount of trophies he won, and he just knew how to get the win every time, Fergie time and all that. And yeah, that period of dominance I think is very, very hard to replicate. So for me, it's got to be him.
Fair enough. And then the last question is, who is the greatest football team ever? So it can be like, for a tournament, for a season, for a game, whatever. But who's the greatest team to ever play?
Brazil, 2002. I'm going in my lifetime again with this one because I'm aware there are some very good Brazilian teams and other teams that have gone before. But yeah, seeing Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Roberto Carlos and the like in their pomp was just something special. Like, it was in the day where, we saw videos of games, but we did, it's not like the coverage now where you can pretty much get any game anytime you like. You didn't see them too much, but when you did see them, you saw something special. So to see them all come together, win the World Cup in 2002, and seeing them sort of, I thought, quite comfortably beat, I know it was only 1 goal, but when they quite comfortably beat England in the end, Seaman getting lobbed and all that. Ronaldinho absolutely meant that free kick for me, but just to see them, to see any one of those players on their own was incredible. The fact that they had this team of them all together, for me, that was the best team and the most exciting team, because Brazil's always exciting, isn't it? But they really they just had that Brazilian flair in abundance, every one of them. Felt like even the centre backs were quite classy.
Yeah.
So for me, you can't see past some of those players. So Brazil, 2002, even though you might have seen the best of those players in other places, but when they came together, did it in the World Cup, they were still pretty special, So that's it for me.
All right, that's possible. That's it for the conversation as well. So, obviously, before we go, is there anything you want to plug, share, anything you want at home to make sure they do?
Yeah, if you're up for listening to Total Sport Merseyside, absolutely, we'd love you along. Something we're trying to do this season is to have more fans like yourself. You've been on, is to have more fans speaking to us on a regular basis, and we're looking for contributors all the time. So we want it to be like a real fan discussion. Like, we have like the interviews with the managers and the players, but we don't want to sort of play too much of them. We want to have the chats that fans will be having on the terraces, in the pubs, on the streets, wherever it is, but on your radio. So that's us. So yeah, Total Sport Merseyside. I'm on a Wednesday 6 till 8. We're on every night 6 till 8. I present on a Wednesday 6 till 8, and on a match day as well. Whenever Everton and Liverpool are playing, we'll get fans in the studio. We'll be speaking to fans throughout. So that's when we're on. And yeah, I'd love if you could listen to those throughout the season. Really, we've got our new BBC Sounds Everton, Liverpool and Tranmere Rovers channels as well. So if you head onto there, type in your team name onto BBC Sounds, and then you'll see all sorts that we do to do with your club on there. So hit subscribe and then find us on there.
Right, that's possible. Thank you very much again for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching at home. We'll see you next time on the Football Historian Podcast.
Locking eyes from across the room, heart is pounding. What do I have to lose? This kind of feeling tends to blur your sight.